the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. My name is Brian Wallace, and I am the MS Michigan Man 64. The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast is about chronic disease awareness. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. It's an invisible chronic disease that I've been battling for half of my life. I want to share with you what it is like living with the chronic disease from my experiences and the experiences of other chronic disease warriors. We can fight to have a voice to those that want to listen. Together, we can motivate and educate. Hi, and welcome to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. So today I am very excited. I am sitting down with my daughter, the child of a chronic disease warrior. She's 22 years old. My daughter's name is Megan, and she is a senior at Kent State University in Ohio. She's studying to be an elementary school teacher. How are you doing today, Megan?
Hi, Dad. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So, Megan, I brought you on here today. I wanted you to talk about being the child of a dad with multiple sclerosis, and you've basically have never known me to not have multiple sclerosis, being that I've had it for 27 years. So can you kind of give me your understanding as far as what you know, what MS is, and when you started figuring out what MS is and what your understanding of it is?
When I started to figure out what it is, and honestly, what I tell people now that ask me what it is, I tell them to imagine a phone cord or wire that has the coding, and I tell them that that's your nerves, or our nerves pretty much, and the coding is the myelin, and your body with the MS cells kind of eat away at that myelin and destroy your nerves and your whole nervous system, which is why it affects your ability to walk, see, move around, pretty much all that. Wow. So that's when I first started learning, and I still use that definition because I feel like that's just like the simplest way to put it.
Yeah. That's the definition that the neurologist gave me when I first got diagnosed to it. That really made me kind of understand what was going on in my body, and that's kind of the definition that I use for everybody when I'm trying to explain that disease. So I'm kind of glad that you it helped you. I didn't even realize that you still use that story. That's pretty cool. So when you were young, and you started figuring out what multiple sclerosis is, and what was going through your head? I mean, was it scary for you, or how do you remember that when you were young?
I don't think it was really scary. It was more, like we said in the beginning, like, all I've ever known you is my dad that has MS. Like, you've never been healthy, I guess. Yeah. Is the way to put it. My whole life. So that was kind of my normal, was you having MS. So it wasn't really scary. I guess the more scary parts were, like, your episodes, when you would be at your worst for however long your episode lasted, but then you would go to your
Solumedrol.
Yeah, the injections, the treatments, or whatever. Yeah, infusions. And then you'd be pretty much better, or back to your type of normal. Yeah. For however long. So it wasn't really scary. It was just more of like oh, here we go again, like, yeah. Gotta go to your infusions.
Yeah. So, I don't know if there's a right or a wrong answer to this. So, I'm interested to hear what you're going to say. I know when you were young and we were growing, or you were growing up, and I didn't want you to be afraid of the disease. So I kind of, I was on Copaxone. I was giving myself a shot every day, and I would have you and Brad, that you guys would take turns pushing the plunger down when I would do the injection into my body. And just to kind of get you guys, acquainted with what I had to go through every day. And I don't know if that was a right or a wrong way of doing it. Did looking back at it, did you think that was a positive thing with you as far as understanding the disease and what I was going through?
I would say that is the better way to go about it. I would have rather you tell me and Brad about the disease and how you're going, how it's processing pretty much, rather than leaving us kind of in the dust about it and not telling us about it, because then I feel like I'd be more scared, more anxious, seeing you fall, trip, your eyesight getting worse, your ability to drive, all that getting worse, and having no idea what's causing it.
Yeah.
I'd rather know.
Yeah. Okay. I at least I did something right bringing you up. That's a good thing. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to that. I think it's a personal choice. I was just curious to see, what your thoughts on it was. So another thing that with MS, there's a lot of mental health issues that I've gone through, and I actually denied a lot of them, for quite a long time, probably 15 years into this disease. But I finally started getting treatment and all that, and that was something that I kind of wish that I would have gotten you and Brad involved in at a young age, just dealing with a parent with chronic disease, and I didn't do that, and I'm sorry. But I do know that now, being 22 years old, you on your own have gone to a counselor for other reasons. But I know you talk about my chronic disease. Talk a little bit about the mental health aspect of having a parent with chronic disease, and your thoughts on if you think that counseling would have benefited you at an earlier age had me and your mom gone that route.
I got myself into therapy when I was 18. I signed myself up, and yeah, there was another reason why I started, but you were one of the topics on one of the first couple sessions, because she just wanted to get background on me. And then once she heard that my dad has MS, but he was this Division I Big Ten football player, and my grandpa died when you were at a young age, and just like hearing all these things, she knew that we needed to go deeper into you, like your part of my life. So yeah, I do think it's very important for kids to parents that have chronic diseases to go through therapy and counseling, because it'll help them cope with it better. And I do wish that we got put into it earlier.
Yeah, I wish too.
Just because, well, with me personally, going through the divorce, not really understanding it, but like understanding, I guess, the worst part of it, of my parents not being together anymore.
Yeah. And
then on top of that, your MS started getting worse. So I feel like getting into therapy then would have probably been better, but I'm glad I'm in it now, and I'm still growing.
Yeah, like I said, I apologize for not getting you in it earlier. I mean, you live and you learn, but I would, if I had to do it all over again, yeah, absolutely, Megan, I would have gotten you guys into counseling at a lot younger of age, because the mental health part of either having the chronic disease or just being a child, or even a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, of somebody with a chronic disease. I mean, there is a lot of things that go on in your head, either the person that has the disease or the person that's living with a person with the disease. It's just the mental health part of it is just a struggle. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to reach out for help with that.
And I feel like when I was younger, counseling and therapy wasn't as popular, I guess, as it is now.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's a lot more people that are kind of advocating for mental health awareness now than they were years ago.
Yeah.
So
I think COVID had a lot to do with that too.
Yeah, true.
Because I think the last 6-7 years, the mental health part of it has spiked a little bit, and but yeah, with the counseling. So let me ask you this, and I asked you, your thoughts on it. But when you were young, and you saw that your dad had a little hitch in his giddy up, and he was starting to use a cane, and it always made me wonder as the dad. I don't want my kids to be embarrassed of me. But did you ever have like thoughts like or how other kids saw me, limping or walking with a cane or struggling or all that? I just want to hear what your thoughts, from your memories of being in grade school and seeing your dad and what your thought process was back then.
I don't think I'd say I was ever embarrassed, just because having this disease has been my whole life, so this has been my normal, like I've said. So this is just kind of what I've been used to for the last 22 years, so this is not embarrassing for me. You always tried to do everything that you could. Like, you went, I think it was second grade, when I was the star of the week, you still came in, you read the book, you did the donuts for dads. Like, you still were my dad. Like, you still did everything that all the other dads did. You just had little hiccups. But it never stopped you from doing any of those things. You and Brad were probably like my biggest motivation, to keep on fighting, with this disease. I wanted to be there for you guys, and I think everybody has to find their motivation to keep on fighting this disease. But did you ever have like kids ask you questions? Like, they see me walking around with a cane. Did they like, hey, why is your dad got a cane? What's wrong with him? Did none of that ever embarrass you or anything like that? They wouldn't really ask. I think the people that would ask the most are my coaches. Like, when I was in middle school, and the gym was down the stairs. Like, I know you couldn't do the stairs, but there were some times where I would go ask my coach if I can help you, like, get down the stairs or something, and they'd be perfectly fine. Like, and then I think the very first game he saw you walk in with the cane, and he didn't ask. I just kind of told him, like, hey, my dad has MS. Like, he can't really get around, so he might have to leave the game early. Is it okay if I go say bye? And, like, they've all been pretty much fine with me doing it, obviously, because you're my dad.
Yeah.
Even if they said no, I would have still ran over and hugged you real quick.
Yeah. So, have you ever seen, like, when we're out in the public, how society perceives me, and like the good and the bad that you've seen in your 22 years with me being around, and the progression that I've gone in? I mean, obviously, when I was fine, when I was still walking around and everything was good, I mean, you didn't see anything from other people. But as I started struggling, how did you perceive how society saw me?
I feel like there's not only two groups of people, but like the two biggest ways to kind of categorize these people is that there's the one group where they see this guy that obviously can't walk because he has a cane, has a walker, wheelchair, whatever. So they're going to hold the door open. They're going to kind of go out of their way to help you get to where you're trying to get. Or, like, I see it a lot when we're walking into a restaurant. If I'm not the one holding the door open, there's somebody usually there holding it open for you. Mm-hmm. Or when we're driving, if I'm not the one driving, you're the one driving, and you have that handicap sticker, I feel like there's some people that just don't really judge, but then there's also some people that see you get out of the truck, and they don't see the wheelchair, don't see the cane, And they're like, okay, why the heck do you have a handicap sticker?
Yeah.
Or there's some people where we're at a restaurant and you have your walker folded up and the people walking by don't trip over it, but they have to walk around it and they kind of see it as like a block in the road.
Yeah.
So they're like angry that this thing is in their way.
Yeah.
Or they'll like roll their eyes at you.
Yeah.
And it's like, you didn't ask to have MS.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, and it's sad. It's sad. Does it make you angry or frustrated or when you see people like that?
Yeah, it makes me frustrated because I feel like people think that you're like faking this illness or something.
Yeah. Because it's invisible.
Right. And I know, because you're my dad and I've lived with you for 22 years now, I know that it's real. You're not faking it. If you are, you deserve an Oscar.
Yeah.
So it's like frustrating what I know people don't know, but it's real. Everything is real that you do. You're not trying to put on a show.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think anybody that's diagnosed with a chronic disease is putting on a show. I wish I'd get an Oscar for it, though. I've fallen with some grace. I could probably get an Oscar for some of my falls, which leads me into our next topic, Meg. I always like to goof around. I like humor. I use humor a lot to cope with my multiple sclerosis. I'm always making fun of myself. Talk about some of the funny things that me and you have done throughout your 22 years, and just kind of like the way that I didn't want you to be afraid of the disease, so we just kind of we had fun with it.
My number one favorite thing that we have done is when we would have like a little foam football or one of the dogs' tennis balls, and we would toss it back and forth. And you said that you were seeing doubles, so you'd see two of the tennis balls coming at you, and you would kind of just guess which one was the real one, and you try to catch the real one, and sometimes you picked wrong, and so it would just hit you in the forehead. So those were pretty funny. And then your falls, some of your falls were just so quiet, we had no idea you even fell.
I fell with grace.
Yes, very majestic. And we would rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how majestic it was. Mm-hmm. I remember there was one time where it was snowing and you came in from your car and you fell in the driveway. We were all already inside, so we had no idea. We just thought you were just trailing behind, like walking in slow because you're usually the last one in anyways.
Yeah.
And you come in and you're covered in snow, and we're like, what the heck happened? And you said that you fell, and then later that night we were going out for dinner, and we see your snow angel in the driveway.
Yeah, I was like a turtle on my back. I couldn't roll over because the snow was so deep, man. That was so terrible. And that's one of the biggest reasons I can't stand winter now, because I fall in it, I can't get back up.
Yeah, and then there was, I think it was right when you got your wheelchair. We had both Ava and Z, and we went to some metro park, I think, in Parma. Mm-hmm. And we thought that Ava, because of how hard she would pull on walks, we thought that she could pull you in your wheelchair, and we were very wrong. They did not pull you.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah, we have fun in the wheelchair too, because if I'm driving on my own, I'm a terrible driver. I'm always bumping into things, but I've run people over, and you just have fun with it. But you have to do that with this disease, because if you don't have humor with this disease, it's just going to tear you up. If I got upset every time I fell down, you would be a wreck too, because if I get upset, then that would make you...
off of it.
Yeah, you would feed off of it. So that's why I always tried to use humor with my multiple sclerosis. Mm-hmm. So another question that I've always had for you, and I don't know what the answer is going to be, because I have never asked you this before. But I know a lot of people, and let me start when me and your mom first decided that we wanted to have kids. And I had multiple sclerosis. We were kind of, going back and forth in the idea. Okay, is it hereditary? Is it not hereditary? We went and talked to my neurologist, and my neurologist said that there was no scientific evidence of it being hereditary. I have no family history of it. Your grandpa, your grandma, nobody on their side has ever had MS. I'm the only one with MS. So there's no hereditary path in our family. Now being 22 years old, having a mind of your own, reading stuff on the internet, reading how there's family members that have MS, and if a mom has it, sometimes the daughter has it. It's just you can read whatever you want to read out there. How do you, in your head, approach the whole hereditary thing with multiple sclerosis?
I honestly haven't really thought about it, just because I've been told that it's not hereditary, or there's like certain parts or certain strands of MS that are hereditary or whatever, but like nothing is 100% scientifically confirmed.
Right.
So I'm not really worried about it. I don't have any symptoms. I walk fine. I don't trip, which I think you said was your number one symptom, right? Your first symptom?
Yeah, my eyes and my tripping, yeah.
And, like, my eyesight, it's not good, but neither is yours or mom's.
Yeah, you're not seeing double or nothing.
Right, no. Like, I feel fine, so I'm not trying to...
And you don't stress about it, though?
No. Like, because I haven't had any symptoms, like... Yeah, my leg falls asleep, but I find out it's the way that I'm sitting. Like right now, when I get up, my leg will probably be asleep, but I'm sitting on my foot, so I know that's why.
Yeah.
So I'm not really stressed about it, and I probably won't be stressed about it until if I start having symptoms.
Yeah. I was just curious because I know it. You would think it's got to be in the back of your head. I'm being a kid of a parent with a chronic disease, and I don't know. As I said, I just curious. Being a 22-year-old, are you even worried about it? But I'm glad that you're not. That's good that you're not, because why worry about something you have absolutely no control over?
Yeah, I'm not worried about it for sure. But I do sometimes think, like, when my leg does fall asleep, I'm like, okay, this is what Dad feels 24/7. Like, this is crazy. Like, I don't know how you do it. So, I think of it like that way, but I don't think of me having it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. So... I know there's pros and cons to everything. There's pros to being 6'5", and there's cons to being 6'5". For me, and there's pros to being, if a female is 5'2" and or 5'10". What would you say if there were any pros to having a dad with a chronic disease? What would the pros be?
Probably not right to say it, but your handicap sticker.
Hey, okay.
I would say that's probably one of the big pros, because you get closer parking. If we were to go to Cedar Point, you'd get the fast lane pass for whoever's in our party. Yeah,
Cedar Point is an amusement park, kind of like a Six Flags or a Disneyland type thing in Ohio. That's what she's talking about. But yeah, you if you're handicapped, we would go. We wouldn't have to wait in the line for an hour. We would be like the first car. So okay, any other pros to it?
If we were to go to a show or a concert or something, usually the handicap accessible seating is closer to the front or closer to the aisleway, which are usually better seats, I guess.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to make you climb levels of stairs, because you're disabled, so
Yeah.
they have to give you the good seating.
Yeah.
And usually that goes with the whole party.
So there are pros to having a parent with a chronic disease.
Yeah.
So I knew that I was good for something. So, okay, and then what would your cons be of having a parent with a chronic disease?
I would say limited traveling. Like, I know when we had to go to Georgia for Alyssa's wedding, that drive was pretty hard on you.
Yeah.
Really, that whole trip was kind of hard on you.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah.
And it probably wouldn't have even been better if we would have flown, just because an airplane is tighter than a car.
Yeah, especially for someone that's 6'5". Yeah, it's not fun in a plane.
Right, and I don't know if airplanes have handicap seating for free, or is it just like the front row? But the front row is like you still have to pay for the seat, and I don't know.
I haven't flown in so long just because it would be such a hard stress on me. Just to think about flying, it just
yeah.
So yeah, if I traveling sucks. There's no doubt about it. Even when we went to Virginia Beach back when you were really young, and I drove that whole trip. That was like an 8-hour from Ohio. And I was in good shape then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but that was still hard, So yeah, traveling is very hard. That's definitely a con. Any other cons with being a kid of a parent with a chronic?
I'd say your memory, because I would know that I've told you something, and you would say, "Well, I don't remember you telling me."
Yeah, I do that a lot.
And then sometimes, it hasn't really happened, but I know sometimes you would get frustrated or mad because you think that I haven't told you, but you just forgot that I told you.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of something that we just got to work out and deal with. So I don't really know if that would be a con, but.
No, I would call it a con. Yeah. I mean, I get it, it's hard, just seeing the way that you have grown, being a kid with a parent with a chronic disease, and just seeing your understanding, how you were willing to accept it and learn about it, and you didn't run away from it. And then, because I mean, even when you turned 18, you could have just said, you know what, I don't want to deal with that anymore. I don't want to deal with the MS, and it's sad that some people do that. I've heard stories about that where, their kids, they just, they don't want to deal with that chronic disease. And, that makes me sad that there are people that have kids that do that. And I'm so glad that I don't. It's hard. It's hard. And, it's hard to have support. And you're my support. And, it's a good thing to have kids like you.
Well, you're my support, too.
Yeah, I try to be. So I also want to let everybody know that the reason that me and her are sitting here today doing this is this has all been Megan's idea. So I want you to kind of explain how I came to be this MS Michigan Man 64 podcast and how you came up with the idea, what inspired it, and, how you even talked me into doing this.
So I've been on TikTok for a few years now, probably right when it launched. I got TikTok. And I've seen creators of people that just either have some type of illness and they just kind of explain their story, or they're a spouse of somebody that has an illness, or a lot of them are like their wife or husband has cancer and it's just how they kind of go through life with it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that would be kind of cool if Dad did something like this, because how many people can say they played Division I football at the University of Michigan. And 3-4 years later, they get diagnosed with this life-changing disease. Yeah. Like, I feel like that's a story that people aren't, like, searching for, but, like, once they find it, they're hooked. Yeah. And so that's why I thought that getting started on TikTok would be cool for you. And then I think you kind of found the idea of starting a podcast and
it was a combined idea. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, but I think TikTok, yes, I really wanted you to do it. Yeah. And I think it would just be cool to say, like, hey, my dad's TikTok famous.
Yeah, like, TikTok famous. I'm not even doing this to be famous. You know what? I want to help people, Meg. You know, and I think that, like, having our conversation, you know, with a kid of somebody that has a chronic disease and a young one at that, a 22-year-old, and talking about your experiences with this is helpful to people because they can learn from the way you think, as well as the way that I think about this disease. Because this disease isn't easy. It's not easy for me. It's not easy for the kids. It's not easy for the spouse. It's not easy for anybody. And I think the more that people understand about this disease and how you live with it, the better we are, you know, as a community. You know, it's just understanding, and I just don't think that people get it. I you know, that's been my biggest struggle in 27 years. Is just people just don't understand. You understand it because you've lived with it for 27 or for 22 years, but you know, if you don't live with it, you don't ask questions, right? And you don't care. You know, and that's the thing that I'm trying to help people and change just a little bit. You know, just help people understand.
Yeah, and if there was, well, I would say that you having MS, really just having a chronic disease, has honestly shaped who I am, because starting from when I was in middle school in sports, I know that you weren't able to come to some of the games, and it would motivate me to do better in my sport because I know you would want to hear the better stats than if I just sat the bench. So that pushed me to play harder, to improve how I play, so I can tell you how well I played in those sports. Yeah. And then it also... honestly, it also helped me decide on becoming a teacher, too. Because I know, you know, I started where I wanted to work with kids, and I knew that from the start. But I knew I wanted to help people because I've spent my whole life helping you. I've gone to your doctor's appointments, and just, like, seeing that, I knew I wanted to help people. And I knew you wanted to be a teacher at first, so that kind of pushed me, too. Yeah. Because I wanted to do something that you never got the chance to do. Yeah. So that pushed me too.
Yeah. You know, Megan, I am so proud of you as a dad, just in your accomplishments, growing up, playing softball, and just the way that you've matured as a young lady, and the way you see people. You know, I know that you really care about people. I know you love kids. You have a passion for it. I'm just so proud of you, and I really want to thank you so much for coming on this show. It meant a lot to me, and I would definitely love to have you on again just to talk more about being a kid with having a dad with MS. I think it's very important to hear your perspective of it. You know, you're normal. You're a typical person, and you understand it. And I think hearing your perspective is huge, and I would hope that you would love to do an episode with your dad again in the future. Yeah, I would love to. Yeah. Especially if people have questions for me. Yeah. Like, ask me anything or just to talk. Like, yeah. Especially in a year, it'll be so different. I'll be a teacher. Yep. I'll have my own classroom. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. If you have any questions for me or for Megan, please put them in the comments section. down below. Hit the subscribe button on the podcast, whether you're following on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple. Please follow, and I will talk to you the next time on the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. Thank you so much, Megan. I love you, and we'll talk to everybody later.
Thanks for having me. I love you.